How's it going? I'm keeping my shirt on. So, although I brought pictures of me with my shirt off, so hopefully that'll suffice. Thank you for allowing me to be here. I'm always humbled when I get to come share my story. It kind of helps me to understand why I've been through what I've been through, and really kind of see the full picture of God's plan. And when I can share my experience, and if it impacts someone else, it really helps me understand why I've been through what I've been through. So I'm a wheelchair bodybuilder. I'm a wheelchair basketball player. I've dabbled in some track and field stuff. Wheelchair athletics has kind of been my life since I've been in a wheelchair. So that just kind of, and that Philippians 4:13 has just kind of been my mantra. You know, someone was talking about strength earlier tonight, and that's a big part of my story. And I'm going to explain to you why I've been able to accomplish more in a wheelchair as I ever did as an able-bodied. But I have a short period of time to tell you a lot that is in my story, so I'm going to move quickly. But I want to start with another scripture, and I think that this is a very powerful scripture. If you can put it up on the screen for me. And it kind of encapsulates what my story is all about. So this comes from 2 Corinthians chapter 12, 7 through 10. It says, "Because of the extravagance of those revelations, and so I wouldn't get a big head, I was given the gift of a handicap to keep me in constant touch with my limitations. Satan's angel did his best to get me down. What he in fact did was push me to my knees. No danger then of walking around high and mighty. At first, I didn't think of it as a gift. I begged God to remove it 3 times. 3 times I did that, and he told me, 'My grace is enough. It's all you need.' My strength comes into its own your weakness. Once I heard that, I was glad to let it happen. I quit focusing on the handicap and began appreciating the gift. It was a case of Christ's strength moving in on my weakness. Now I take limitations in stride, and with good cheer, these limitations that cut me down to size, abuse, accidents, opposition, bad breaks, I just let Christ take over. And so the weaker I get, the stronger I become." I'm going to say that one more time. The weaker I get, the stronger I become. And that's really what my story is all about. I did not even know the strength of God until I absolutely had to have it. And there was no other choice. I had nowhere else to go. So I am a local guy from Cornelius, North Carolina, right down the road. Born and raised. I like to tell people that I can remember when they used to drive tractors down Highway 115. You can't do that anymore, but that's how long I've been living here. So I am a local, part of the local hero. And, you know, I really had a dream childhood. Cornelius back in the day was kind of like Mayberry. I mean, everybody knew everybody, and, you know, it was just good people and good times. I had a house on the lake. I spent my days out swimming and water skiing and fishing. And my father was a person very well known in the community. He also grew up Cornelius native, and he worked at a local grocery store that was called Cashin's. And many of you may know the Cashin's Quick Stops that are around Huntersville and Cornelius. And Mr. Cashin used to have a grocery store that competed with the Food Lions back in the day, or Food Town, I guess is what it used to be. And my father, who started off there as a bagger, worked his way all the way up and became general manager. And, you know, one of the things that they really pressed upon back then, which you don't see as much these days, is just the importance of customer service, being respectful, carrying groceries out to the car for people. And, you know, he just treated people with respect. And in turn, he had the respect of really the whole community. So my hero has always been my father. And fast forward to the first kind of tragic situation that happened in my life, happened 2 days after my 12th birthday, 3 days before Christmas. I was traveling back from a dance recital, and my parents had somehow finagled me into taking shagging lessons. And for those of you not from the area, shagging is a type of dance, not the other kind of shagging. But so, they put us up there, and we're all cute, and they love watching us, and had this little dance recital. And it was late. I was on my way home. My dad was going to take me by McDonald's. And I kind of got in the seat, just put my head down and fell asleep. So I wake up, and I can remember just like it was yesterday. I'm looking up, and I can see the McDonald's sign, millions served every day. And I can feel kind of the cold asphalt under my body, and I can feel this blood just kind of dried on my face. And I kind of roll my head to the side, and I can see the wreckage. And what had happened was a gentleman had stolen a truck and, driving frantically, had rear-ended us. I can remember the paramedics that were there working on us, and it's kind of a fog, it's kind of like when you wake up from a dream and you're like, am I dreaming or is this real? And then slowly kind of the reality set in that this was actually happening. And I could hear the paramedics working on my dad. They all knew him. They were local, just saying, hang on, Sam, hang on. And I remember riding to the hospital in the ambulance with him, working on him the whole way. And much later, in the hospital room with my mother, just trying to ask, how's Dad? And all she could do was put her head down and shake her head. He didn't survive that wreck. He passed away. And my hero died when I was 12. So that is where the story, the tragic part of my story begins. And from there, my life started to head down a particular path. And I didn't have my father's guidance. I didn't have his, how to deal with life as a teenager. My poor mother, I have an older brother, did the best she could raising the two of us. And it was just her and me and my brother, and we put her through hell. And I was so uncomfortable in my own skin and didn't know how to deal with that confusion and that pain, so I sought out drugs and alcohol. And fast forward to the years when I'm in college, I somehow graduated high school, but at this point I'm drinking alcoholically. I'm using marijuana on a daily basis. By the time I get to Appalachian State, where I had a long, illustrious career, didn't get much classwork done, but did a lot of drinking and a lot of drugging. And, it just kept getting worse. For those of you that don't know much about alcoholism or drug addiction, it's a progressive disease, and it always gets worse. It never gets better. And that is what happened with me. And it all culminated at this moment. And I could go through a lot of war stories of the crazy things I did while I was up there and all the dumb things I did and the drugs that I got into. But one night, or one morning, actually, it was probably 7 o'clock in the morning. I'd been up all night doing cocaine. And I remember just thinking about myself. And, one of the things that always didn't sit well with me was how well respected my father was, and now me looking at this person I had become. That guilt, shame, and remorse of, God, man, what happened, Tim? What kind of person are you now? And I had this moment of clarity, and I remember it. I have certain memories that just stick with me, and I can see myself sitting on the couch at my friend's apartment, been up all night, and my hands just won't stop shaking. And I've just got so much cocaine running through my blood, and I can't sleep. And I'm caught in a spot where I want to ask for help, but then I also want to just do more drugs. I'm caught in between those two decisions. And I'll tell you, that is a miserable, miserable place to be. So what happened is, not long after, my family got me out of Boone, and I moved back here, and they had an intervention and basically said, we need to get you some help. And not long after, I was in a treatment center, and I began attending a 12-step program. So, they taught me a lot of things in this 12-step program, and one of the things that they taught me was that I had a progressive and fatal illness. And since 1956, the American Medical Association agreed that alcoholism and drug addiction was, in fact, a disease. You guys probably know this. And they began teaching me about my condition, one that many medical doctors don't really know a lot about, but other alcoholics and drug addicts know a lot about it. And what they taught me was that I have a powerless condition. I have a physical allergy, meaning I put alcohol or drugs into my body, and then I have this phenomenon of craving, which means I want more. And that was the difference between me and those who aren't alcoholics and drug addicts. They take it into their body and they're like, whoa, I better slow down. Me, I say, give me more. And that was the physical part. I also had a mental obsession that told me it's okay to continue doing it. So I'd go on a bender, and I'd be out all night, and then I'd say, oh, I'm never going to do this again. And then later that day, things would calm down. I'd change my mind, and by the night, I was like, no, never mind. I was just kidding. I'll be okay. And then I was off to the races again. And I'm seeing some head nods in the audience. So I'm sure you guys know some people that have dealt with this disease. It's very insidious. So my problem was that I'm powerless. And in those 12 steps, they teach you certain things. Number one, step one, that you're powerless. Step two is the answer to solve that problem, which is power. And they refer to it as a higher power. I refer to it as God. My faith is in Jesus Christ. And step three is a commitment to turn my life over to that power. And the remaining steps are how to build that relationship with that higher power, which includes self-examination, taking a personal inventory, righting wrongs done to others, and then focusing on spiritual development to increase that relationship and that connection. So that program not only saved my life, it changed my life drastically. And I was afraid. I was afraid of living that life, the life that I'd heard so many alcoholics and drug addicts describe, that if I continue to do it, it's just going to get worse and worse, and this is what's going to happen. So that scared me. And I was so sick of that guilt, shame, and remorse of the person I had become, thinking of the legacy that my father had left. And he was still, if you go to the Raymer Funeral Home on the corner of 115 and Sanford Road in Huntersville, they will tell you that my father's viewing was still the most attended that they've ever had. That's how respected he was, and that was in 1988. So I began to turn my life around. Had the program, had a connection with God, and things were getting better. I have a good relationship with my family again. I'm back in school, going to UNC Charlotte. Things are good. And I remember, and this is one of the messages I always like to talk about when I tell my story, is I was sitting down one day watching TV, and on the screen is an old video of Rabbi Kushner, who spoke in Charlotte at some point, and he was talking about his book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People. Many of you maybe know it. But Rabbi Kushner kind of explained and summarized his book and gave me a message that, thank God, kind of stuck with me, but said, basically, if you're asking the question why, you're asking the wrong question. But instead, you have to ask, what am I going to do about it? And that stuck with me. A good thing, because not long after, and I don't know if I mentioned this before, but the wreck that I had with my father was not the one that landed me in this wheelchair. This one's coming next. So things are going good. I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee, visiting my brother and his family for Christmas, and driving back, and I'm actually in Hickory at 40 and 321. And I'd been having episodes of feeling like I'm going to faint, feel like I was going to pass out. I actually went to the hospital at one point. They never really found anything, just that my electrolytes were low. So I'm driving back, and I start feeling funny. And I pull off the road. And I think that I'm okay, so I pull back on, and I continue on down. And once again, I don't remember anything. And I wake up again, and it's just like waking up from a dream. I'm thinking to myself, is this real? And this time I wake up in an ambulance, and they're telling me what happened. And apparently I had fainted, driven off I-40, and landed on 321, and just all four wheels and the impact broke my vertebrae and severed my spinal cord. So I'm a complete T8 para, completely paralyzed from here down. So here I am again, asking the question why, the same question I asked when my father died. And Rabbi Kushner had delivered a message to me, you know, and when I get to come speak and I get to share the message with you, hopefully it will apply in your life. So this was a message that was kind of reinforced through the program, and all of my friends in the program, you know, they used to talk a lot about living in the solution and not the problem, focus on the things I can change, not the things I can't. So that's really the mentality that I had. They kept me focused on those things. They kept me focused on my relationship with God. And when I read that scripture about being in those weak spots when we need God the most, that's when he shows up with the most strength. And, you know, 2 days after my accident, two guys rolled into my hospital room, Chuck and Dave, and they began to tell me about their lives, and that just because you're in a wheelchair, that life doesn't end, and all the things that they have done. Dave in particular still is a very inspiring individual, a person who I actually later was able to help get clean and sober. So it all came full circle. But Dave is a very unique individual. He has excelled at every wheelchair sport, adaptive sport that you could imagine. He's literally the Jordan of wheelchair basketball. He has more national championships, more MVPs, more gold medals than anybody. So it wasn't long before Dave had me strapped into a wheelchair learning how to play wheelchair basketball. And I was an athlete. I played basketball, played a lot of golf. And I'll never forget the first time I got into a chair and you're strapped in and it's got these wheels that angle out and you got wheels in the front, wheels in the back so you don't tip back. And, I push out and I'm just coasting across the floor and I'm moving and turning and just gliding. And I'm thinking to myself, man, I just got my legs back. And, I was hooked, still am. I just played in a tournament in Alabama over the weekend, played 5 games over the weekend. I love it. It's a great sport. It's a great outlet for someone like me. So I was able to go back, get a degree from UNC Charlotte. I started playing basketball with the Charlotte team and hooked on the sport. I would wake up at 4:30 in the morning, go to the gym, then go to work somehow. And I was able to get to a place where I was invited for a tryout for a college team in Texas. So went down to Texas, University of Texas in Arlington, and played wheelchair basketball. Those top right pictures there for the Moving Mavs. One of the few schools in the country, really, that have a wheelchair basketball program, and spent 3 years in grad school playing wheelchair basketball. And, there's a lot of things. I'm very proud of my 3 years down there. I accomplished a lot of things. But I'll tell you that after the accident, my faith and the sense of God's strength in my life was very strong. It was incredibly strong. I mean, number one, I almost died again. So that in itself will tell you, life's short. You might want to go do something before it's over with, right? So I started doing things, and it was basketball, and it was work, and it was grad school, and I graduated with 2 master's degrees, and got to try out for the U.S. team, and then I got into bodybuilding, and I was like, why the heck not, And it just, like, one success breeded another success. And, I don't say all those things to be braggadocious, but more to just say that I've learned through just knowing that God's going to provide strength and having a mentality that, I can do these. I mean, who the heck would have thought, bodybuilding? I mean, I'm paralyzed. How do you do bodybuilding? Well, there's another guy right there that does it. I've got him hooked into it. It's fun, and it's challenging. And even though our bodies might be broken, my mind is not, and my spirit is not. So I will leave you with kind of a final thought that really kind of encapsulates that scripture that I started with. And I'll tell you, today, the biggest challenge that I have, or the most difficult part to deal with, and I don't know if Abby can agree or relate, but for me, having a visible physical disability, there's a stigma that follows me everywhere I go. People see it, and they're like, and they don't like it because it reminds them of their own mortality, of their own human nature, that our bodies can be broken, life is short, you will die one day, and people deal with that a lot of different ways. Some people are very inspired by me, other people are very threatened by me, But the most important thing that I have learned, and when I think about how God sees me, is that he doesn't see brokenness. And even though my body is broken, I think that God sees me as standing tall and walking tall and a mighty warrior fighting for him every single day. And I know I get a new heavenly body at some point. I just got to deal with this one until then. And it's not so bad. It's really not. I got 99 problems, and being in a wheelchair is just one. All right? So thank you all for letting me be here, and just remember, you're only limited by what you think you can't do.